A quiet, late afternoon turns into absolute terror when a pregnant woman is dragged across the floor of her own home, pinned down while her husband's mistress stands above her with a pair of scissors, laughing as chunks of hair fall onto the tiles. And just a few steps away, the husband watches with his arms crossed, smiling as if the cruelty in front of him is nothing more than entertainment. But what neither of them knows is that her mother is standing in the doorway, witnessing every brutal second with her own eyes. And that single moment will ignite a statewide manhunt, a deadly shootout deep in the forest, and a courtroom reckoning that shakes the entire country. This is not just a story about cruelty. It is a story about a mother determined to stop evil from winning and a justice system that finally stands on the right side. Before we dive in, tell us what time you are watching and where you are tuning in from. Drop a comment below so we can welcome you. The late afternoon sun stretched across the quiet Colorado suburb as Maggie Turner steered her sedan toward her daughter's house. It was one of those calm weekends that usually felt safe and predictable. The sky was bright and wide, the trees still, the air cool. Maggie hummed softly as she parked in the driveway, expecting a peaceful visit. For weeks, she had sensed tension from Anna, but she convinced herself it was just the strain of pregnancy. She stepped out of the car with a small bag of groceries, thinking she would make dinner for her daughter and check on the baby. Nothing prepared her for the silence that greeted her when she pushed the front door open. The house was unusually quiet. Too quiet. Maggie froze in the entryway. The door had not been locked, a detail that immediately twisted her stomach. She called out for Anna, her voice echoing across the living room. No answer. She took a few steps forward, and the stillness felt heavy, almost unnatural. Then a faint sound reached her from upstairs. It was not a conversation. It was not footsteps. It was the muffled, choked sound of someone crying. Her pulse jumped. Maggie dropped the grocery bag on the console table and hurried toward the staircase. Before she reached the first step, another sound cut through the air. A woman's laugh. Sharp. Mocking. Maggie's instincts sharpened instantly. That was not Anna. She rushed up the stairs, gripping the railing to keep herself steady as her heart pounded hard enough to hurt. Halfway up, she heard the cry again. Louder this time, raw and broken. Panic surged through her. By the time she reached the second-floor landing, she was almost running. She followed the awful sounds to the bathroom door, which was partially open. She pushed it with trembling fingers. The sight on the other side hit her like a blow to the chest. Anna was on the cold tile floor, her dark hair fisted in the hand of another woman. That woman stood tall in designer clothes, her grip cruel, the glint of bright metal catching the bathroom light. A pair of sharp salon scissors. The woman tugged Anna's head backward, while strands of long hair dropped to the floor like torn threads. Maggie's breath caught when she saw the pile of hair scattered across the tile, as if someone had tried to erase a part of Anna's identity. And then she saw him. Daniel Hayes, her son-in-law, standing against the wall with his arms crossed, watching everything with a blank and dismissive expression, as if none of it mattered. As if the pain on his pregnant wife's face was nothing but entertainment. The woman with the scissors smirked. Brooke Sanders. The mistress. Maggie had never met her in person, only heard the cold tone Anna described weeks earlier. Now Brooke tilted her head with theatrical satisfaction and said, in a voice dripping poison, "New hair will suit a woman who has already been left behind." Anna whimpered, her breath uneven. One hand clutched her swollen belly. Maggie could tell immediately that Anna's breathing was too fast and labored. Stress-induced contractions could be dangerous. Maggie's heart slammed against her ribs as she stepped fully into the bathroom. For 1 second, she was frozen, unable to comprehend that someone was hurting her daughter in front of her. Then instinct took over. She reached for her phone and snapped a photo. Brooke and Daniel both turned toward the sound. Daniel smirked and did not look the slightest bit embarrassed. Brooke raised the scissors higher, as if daring Maggie to intervene. The air felt sharp and cold. Maggie's voice shook, but she forced herself to stand tall. "Let her go," Brooke sneered. "Oh, so the mother finally shows up." Daniel pushed off the wall, irritation flashing across his face. "This is my house. You should leave." But Maggie ignored him. She moved straight toward Anna, dropping to her knees and wrapping her arms around her daughter. She shielded her with her own body, pulling her away from Brooke's grip. Maggie could feel Anna trembling violently. Her daughter's tears soaked into the sleeve of her sweater. Maggie stroked her head, whispering, "I'm here, I've got you." Daniel's voice rose with anger. "I said get out!" Maggie turned, fire burning behind her eyes. "No, this is evidence, and you will not touch my daughter again." Brooke took a step forward, but Maggie stood between them like a wall. Daniel hesitated, as if trying to decide whether to push the confrontation further. In that moment, Anna's body jerked slightly. A small cry escaped her. She clutched her stomach, her face pale with pain. Maggie recognized the way her daughter curled inward. A contraction, a stress-induced spasm that could escalate. Fear rushed through her, fierce and immediate. That was the final trigger. She grabbed Anna's arm gently but firmly and pulled her up from the floor. "We are leaving. Now." Daniel barked something behind them, but Maggie barely heard it. She focused only on supporting Anna's weight and getting her safely down the stairs. Every step made Anna gasp softly. Maggie kept her close, whispering reassurance. When they reached the front door, Maggie paused long enough to glance back at the house where her daughter had been humiliated. Her jaw tightened. Once outside, she closed the door with a controlled but powerful motion. The click of the latch felt like a boundary, sealing them away from danger. Anna leaned heavily against Maggie's shoulder. Maggie stroked her daughter's back, trying to soothe her shaking body. Yet inside, her thoughts were sharp and focused. She unlocked the car, helped Anna inside, and buckled her seatbelt. The younger woman cried softly, still touching her belly. Maggie brushed her cheek gently. "It's over, sweetheart. I have you." But as she settled into the driver's seat, Maggie's expression changed. Her eyes hardened with cold certainty. She gripped the steering wheel with a strength she did not know she still possessed. In that moment, she made a silent promise. A promise that came from the deepest place inside a mother's heart. She would not let them escape the consequences. Not Brooke, not Daniel, not anyone who dared hurt her child. And with that vow burning in her chest, she started the engine. Anna began to feel sharp abdominal pain, and her breathing turned shallow and fast, forcing Maggie to rush her daughter into the ER immediately. This moment marked the beginning of a painful night that would become the first step in the mother's counterattack. The drive to the hospital felt much longer than it really was. Maggie kept glancing sideways at Anna, who held her belly and breathed in short, frightened bursts. The color had drained from her face. When they reached the emergency entrance of Denver General Hospital, Maggie jumped out, ran to the passenger side, and helped her daughter out of the car. Anna's legs trembled as they crossed the sliding doors into the bright, sterile hallway of the ER. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic, and the steady rhythm of distant monitors hummed through the corridor. Maggie wrapped an arm around Anna's shoulders and guided her toward the reception counter. Anna was shaking so much that Maggie had to support most of her weight. A nurse noticed immediately and hurried over with a wheelchair. Anna collapsed into it, gripping the sides as another contraction tightened her stomach. Maggie walked beside the wheelchair as they moved through the triage station. Nurses began taking Anna's blood pressure, checking her pulse, and asking questions about her pregnancy. The numbers on the monitor climbed higher. One of the nurses exchanged a worried glance with another. Stress could trigger early labor. The doctor who arrived next confirmed the concern. He spoke calmly, but the seriousness of his tone was unmistakable. "We need to monitor her closely. Elevated blood pressure at this stage of pregnancy can be dangerous." Maggie tried to remain calm, but her eyes burned with worry. She squeezed Anna's hand and whispered that everything would be all right. Anna looked at her with wet eyes and a trembling jaw. "I thought they were just trying to scare me," she said softly, her voice cracking. "I didn't know they would go that far." A tear slid down Maggie's cheek, but she kept her voice steady. "They do not get to hurt you again, not physically, not emotionally." The doctor ordered blood work and fetal monitoring. Anna lay on the hospital bed while nurses attached straps around her belly. The rhythmic thump of the baby's heartbeat filled the room. Maggie stood close, not letting go of her daughter's hand. She carefully observed every symptom: the shivering, the shortness of breath, the spikes in her blood pressure. She wrote them in her phone to record the timeline. Her instincts as a mother and as a former social worker sharpened. She knew how important documentation would be. Anna's grip tightened on her hand. "Mom, I'm scared." Maggie leaned down and kissed her forehead. "I'm here. Nobody is going to get near you. You hear me? Nobody." The moment felt almost peaceful until Anna's phone buzzed on the bedside table. Maggie picked it up, expecting a worried message or perhaps a question from a friend. Instead, the screen displayed a text from Daniel. "You pushed her too far. You made her angry. You should not have said anything to Brooke." Maggie stared at the words, her breath turning cold. Of all the possible things Daniel could have written, he blamed Anna, even while her daughter lay in a hospital bed, frightened and in pain. Maggie took a slow breath and set the phone down. She did not want Anna to see the message. It would only add more stress. She glanced again at the photo she had taken in the bathroom. The image of Brooke holding scissors above Anna's head made Maggie's stomach twist with rage. She felt helpless and furious at the same time. She wanted to scream, but she forced herself to stay controlled. Anna needed stability, not more shock. A nurse came in with a clipboard. "Has she experienced any physical abuse recently?" Anna hesitated. Her throat tightened. Maggie stepped closer. "Tell her, sweetheart. You're safe here." Anna nodded and whispered what happened. The nurse's expression softened with concern. She asked follow-up questions while Maggie listened, jaw clenched. The retelling was painful to hear. Each detail reopened the wound in Maggie's chest. When the nurse left, Maggie placed a gentle hand on Anna's shoulder. "You did the right thing. This goes on record. It helps us protect you." The doctor returned after reviewing preliminary results. He recommended that Anna stay at least 24 hours for monitoring. Maggie nodded in agreement. She filled out the hospital's official abuse report. She described the incident thoroughly, including the scissors, the hair on the bathroom floor, and Daniel's refusal to intervene. She submitted every detail to the hospital's patient safety system. When she finished, she stepped into the hallway and pulled out her phone. She scrolled to the contact of a retired police detective she trusted, Russell Moore. A man with decades of experience and someone she had relied on years ago during social work cases. She pressed call. He picked up on the second ring. "Maggie, it's been a while. Is everything all right?" She drew a shaking breath. "I need your help. It's serious. It's about my daughter and what her husband and his mistress did to her." Russell's voice turned stern. "Tell me everything." She did, slowly, clearly, no skipped detail. When she finished, Russell promised to look into Brooke's background immediately. Maggie thanked him, but when she hung up, she felt the weight of everything pressing down again. She walked back into the dim hospital room. Anna had fallen asleep. Her breathing was steady, but her face still held traces of pain. Maggie sat in the chair beside the bed and watched her daughter's chest rise and fall. She refused to leave her side, not even for a moment. She listened to the monitor, the gentle beep of the fetal heartbeat, and the soft hum of the air conditioning. She let the stillness settle around her. Hours passed. Nurses checked on Anna periodically. Maggie never closed her eyes. She replayed the scene in the bathroom over and over. The sound of scissors, the terror on Anna's face, the cold amusement in Daniel's eyes, the cruelty in Brooke's smirk. It ignited something inside her, a flame that burned brighter each time she remembered. Near midnight, Maggie leaned forward and brushed a strand of hair from Anna's forehead. The room was dark, except for the soft glow of the monitor. She whispered, almost to herself, "From now on, I will fight for you. Every step, every day." They will not get away with what they did. And with that quiet vow, Maggie had barely slept. She sat in the chair beside Anna's hospital bed, watching the slow rise and fall of her daughter's chest. The quiet morning light filtered through the blinds when her phone vibrated. She checked the screen and saw a name she trusted deeply: Detective Russell Moore. She stepped into the hallway before answering. He did not waste a second. "Maggie, I have information you need to hear right away." Her pulse quickened. She pressed the phone closer. "Tell me." His voice carried a weight she recognized from years of difficult cases. "This woman, Brooke Sanders, she has a history. She has been accused of attacking other women. One of them was pregnant." Maggie's hand tightened around the phone. For a moment, she could not breathe. "You're certain?" "I pulled 2 old reports," Russell continued. "Neither case went to trial. They were settled quietly. Money changed hands. There is no conviction on her record, but the details are disturbing." Maggie closed her eyes. A hospital cart rattled past her, but she barely noticed. What kind of details? The same pattern: intimidation, humiliation, hair-cutting, psychological pressure. One victim suffered severe stress and ended up on bed rest for weeks. Another woman moved out of state. It looks like Brooke picks vulnerable women, especially ones connected to the men she is involved with. Maggie leaned against the wall, fighting the mix of rage and disbelief rising inside her. She thought she had seen the worst in the bathroom, but this revelation carved deeper. "This was not an accident," she whispered. "This was not jealousy or a moment of anger. She has done this before." "It is repeated behavior," Russell said. "You are not dealing with a simple affair. You are dealing with a predator." The word hit Maggie hard. She thanked Russell and ended the call, her mind burning. She walked back into the room where Anna slept. She sat down slowly, staring at her daughter's face, remembering every strand of hair on the bathroom floor, every tear, every fearful breath. She waited until Anna stirred awake. "Mom," Anna whispered, still weak. "Is there news?" Maggie took her hand gently. "Yes, I spoke with Russell." Anna blinked, eyes already moist. "What did he say?" Maggie hesitated for a moment, but her daughter deserved the truth. "He found 2 past accusations against Brooke. One of the women was pregnant. Both cases were covered up. Both included the same kind of psychological attacks." Anna's face drained of color. She looked away, covering her mouth with a trembling hand. "So she has done this before. Not just with me." "No," Maggie said. "You are not the first woman she targeted." Anna's voice cracked. "Oh God, I thought I was overreacting. I thought I was reading too much into her messages." "You were not wrong," Maggie said, leaning forward. "And you will not be the next woman she damages. I will make sure of that." A tear slipped down Anna's cheek. Maggie held her hand firm and steady, grounding her. The truth was painful, but clarity brought strength. Anna took a shaky breath. "Mom," she whispered, "I never want to go back to that house. Not ever." "You will not," Maggie assured her. "You are safe now." "I promise you." A nurse stepped inside with a clipboard, smiling gently. "Good morning. Her blood pressure looks more stable today." She checked the monitor and wrote down a few numbers. "The baby's heartbeat is strong." Relief washed through Maggie, though the anger beneath it still burned. When the nurse left the room, Anna wiped her eyes. Her voice was small. "I can't believe she followed me into my own home. She sent messages for weeks. Daniel let her live there sometimes. And I didn't even understand what was happening." Maggie listened closely. "Tell me everything she did. All the small things. Anything you remember." Anna began listing the past weeks. The strange noises downstairs at night. The times she thought she heard footsteps behind her in the hallway. The text messages from unfamiliar numbers that said, "Cruel things." Times when she woke up to find Brooke's perfume lingering in the bedroom, even though Daniel had claimed no one visited. Times when Brooke walked into the house without knocking and smiled as if she belonged there. As Anna spoke, Maggie saw the pattern form clearly. It was not chaos. It was design. Brooke had studied Anna, pushed her boundaries, crept into her space until Anna doubted her own instincts. A cycle of psychological abuse so subtle that it would be invisible to most people. But not to Maggie. Not to a mother who spent half her career helping women escape situations exactly like this. Maggie exhaled slowly. This is not just an affair. It is a calculated cycle of abuse. Anna nodded weakly. Daniel ignored everything. He made me feel like I was imagining it. Every time I brought it up, he said I was being sensitive or hormonal. Maggie felt her chest tighten. He enabled her. That is also abuse. Anna cried again, her voice breaking. "Mom, what if she had done something worse? What if yesterday she hurt the baby? What if she comes back?" Maggie held her daughter's hand tighter. "She will not come back. You are finished with that house, and with those people." The weight of the truth lingered in the room. Maggie felt fury surge through her veins, but she also felt something steadier. Determination. She stood and reached for her notebook. She wrote down everything Anna said. Every suspicious behavior. Every message. Every detail that supported the pattern Russell described. There was no room for doubt now. No hesitation. Each detail mattered, and each one brought her closer to protecting her daughter permanently. She opened her phone and messaged Russell again. "Dig deeper into Daniel. I want every sign of neglect or encouragement he gave her." Then she sat down next to Anna and smoothed her hair softly, even though parts of it had been hacked unevenly. Her daughter looked fragile, but there was strength under the surface, strength that needed protecting. A nurse entered again. "Good news. Her blood pressure is stabilizing. She should keep resting." Anna nodded, then whispered, almost like a confession, "Mom, I can't go back to that house. Please don't make me go back." Maggie leaned closer and looked straight into her daughter's eyes. "You will not go back. I will make sure of it." Anna's shoulders relaxed slightly as tears slid down her cheeks. Maggie kissed her forehead softly and stood, stepping into the hallway. She looked down the long stretch of the maternity ward. The polished floor reflected the morning light. Nurses moved quietly from room to room. Everything appeared calm, safe, controlled. She whispered under her breath, with quiet resolve, "It is time to fight back." Maggie drove back to Anna's house with a steady grip on the steering wheel. The hospital's fluorescent lights and the haunting image of her daughter's exhausted face stayed with her as she pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same as it had yesterday, but the air around it felt different. The memory of the bathroom scene lingered like a burn on her skin. She stepped out of the car with slow, deliberate movements, preparing herself for what she needed to do. The house was quiet when she let herself in. She walked through the living room with a purpose, heading straight toward the staircase. Every corner held a trace of Anna's life that had been invaded and poisoned. The photos on the wall, the soft blanket draped on the couch, the kitchen counter where Anna once made tea every morning. These pieces of her daughter's world felt fragile now. Maggie entered the bedroom to gather Anna's personal belongings first. She folded her daughter's clothes carefully and placed them inside a large bag. She collected prenatal vitamins, phone chargers, notebooks, and small items Anna would need in the hospital. With each object she packed, she felt her resolve grow stronger. This was not just about removing Anna's things. It was about removing her daughter's presence from a place where she had been betrayed. While searching for more items in the living room, Maggie noticed something blinking faintly in the corner of her eye. A small indicator light on the home security system flickered. She paused and walked closer. The camera system was still recording. Maggie took a breath. It meant the house had been capturing footage for weeks. She sat at the kitchen table and opened the security app on the home computer. The system required a password, but Anna had shared it with her months earlier. With a few clicks, Maggie accessed the archive of recorded videos. The timeline stretched back 3 weeks. She began downloading everything to a USB drive, her hands slightly trembling as she clicked through the files. The first few clips showed ordinary moments. Anna walking into the kitchen, Daniel entering the house with a cold expression. Nothing unusual. Then she opened the next set of recordings, and her stomach tightened. One clip showed Daniel and Brooke sitting closely together on the couch, whispering and laughing, as if they were the rightful owners of the place. Maggie watched silently, her jaw tightening. In another recording, Brooke stood in the living room holding a pair of scissors. She twirled them between her fingers with an arrogant smile. Daniel sat nearby, indifferent. Brooke said something the microphone captured clearly. "I can fix her look any time. She needs a new style." The tone was mocking, the implication unmistakable. Maggie felt heat rise behind her eyes. She clicked on another file. This time Brooke paced the living room, complaining loudly. "That baby is ruining everything. I am sick of seeing her act like she is untouchable. The kid is not even here yet, and it is already messing up our life." Maggie pressed a hand to her mouth to keep from crying out. Hearing those words aloud made the threat feel even more real. The cruelty in Brooke's voice was not impulsive. It was deliberate. She was not acting out of passing jealousy. She was planning. She enjoyed the idea of hurting Anna. Maggie lowered herself into a chair, her whole body tense. She replayed the scene in her mind of Anna curled on the bathroom floor, the scissors in Brooke's hand, Daniel standing there without a shred of humanity. The pain inside Maggie deepened, but so did her determination. She forced herself to keep working. She copied the videos onto 3 different USB drives, then uploaded a backup to cloud storage. Then she placed the devices into separate pockets of her bag to ensure none of them could be lost or tampered with. Once the data finished transferring, she gathered the bag of Anna's belongings and headed toward the front door. As she stepped outside, she froze. A car had just pulled into the driveway. It was Daniel's. The tires rolled slowly over the concrete and stopped a few feet from her. The engine turned off. Daniel stepped out with a bored, almost annoyed look. When he noticed Maggie standing there, his expression shifted into something sharper, something defensive. Maggie held her ground. She did not step back. She did not break eye contact. She simply stared at him with a cold steadiness that made him hesitate. He approached with the air of someone used to being obeyed. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone edged with suspicion. Maggie lifted the bag of Anna's belongings slightly. "I am taking my daughter's things. She will not be coming back." Daniel let out a low, humorless laugh. "This is still my house." "Not for long," Maggie replied. Her voice did not raise. It did not waver. It was solid and controlled. Daniel stopped walking. His smirk faltered for a moment. He looked at her more carefully, then folded his arms. "You are overreacting." Maggie did not respond. She simply walked past him without a glance, heading directly to her car. Daniel watched, confused and irritated. Maggie reached her vehicle, opened the door, and placed the bag inside. Before getting in, she allowed herself a single look at him. Her expression carried every emotion she felt: pain, fury, and resolve carved from steel. She drove away without waiting for him to speak again. On the road toward downtown, she pulled into a parking lot and took a moment to breathe. She reached for her phone and opened the videos again. She forced herself to watch them one more time. The images cut deeper now that she had distance from the house. Seeing the betrayal captured so clearly made her eyes fill with tears. They streamed down her face, warm and relentless. She let them fall for a moment. Grief and anger poured through her. Then she wiped her face, took a deep breath, and straightened her posture. Her eyes were sharp now, focused. She started the engine again and drove to the law office of attorney Amelia Brooks. The building stood tall among other gray structures in the city center. Maggie parked, grabbed her bag, and walked in. The receptionist recognized the intensity in her eyes and directed her immediately to Amelia's office. Inside, Maggie placed the USB drives and printed screenshots on the desk. She explained nothing at first. She simply pushed them forward. Amelia inserted one of the drives into her computer and clicked through the files. Her professional demeanor cracked slightly as she watched the footage. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. She looked at Maggie with a grave expression. "We have a major case. This is serious. Very serious." Maggie nodded once. Her voice was calm and steady. She had known that from the moment she walked into that bathroom. Daniel paced across the living room, his footsteps heavy against the hardwood floor. He had seen Maggie earlier that afternoon. She walked out of the house with Anna's belongings in her arms and a cold determination in her eyes. The moment he realized Anna was not coming back, something snapped inside him. The image of the empty bedroom filled him with humiliation and rage. He slammed his hand against the back of the couch and turned toward Brooke. "She is gone," he muttered, his voice tight. "Your little stunt scared her off completely." Brooke rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. "She was weak. Anyone would have cracked." Daniel glared at her. "Maggie took all her things. She took her from my house. And now people will start looking at us. We need to get ahead of this." Brooke walked closer and touched his arm lightly. "Then we make her look unstable. We make it seem like she left because she cannot handle being a wife or a mother. People believe that kind of story." Her tone was cool and confident. "We just have to push it." Daniel stared at her as her words settled into his thoughts. Slowly, he nodded. "Fine. Then we start tonight." He grabbed his phone and opened the message thread with Anna. Without hesitation, he began sending message after message. The first few were angry accusations. The next ones carried subtle threats. He claimed she had overreacted. He suggested she was ruining the family. Then he shifted to harsher statements designed to scare her. He sent them rapidly, watching the screen with narrowed eyes. Brooke smirked and lifted her own phone. "I will remind her of what I did." She snapped a photo of the scissors she had used the day before. Strands of dark hair still clung to the blades. She sent the photo to Anna along with the message, "Want me to trim more?" In the hospital room, Anna saw the image and burst into tears so violently that Maggie rushed to her bedside. Anna gasped for air, shaking as she held the phone out. Maggie took it from her and read the message. Her jaw clenched. "Do not respond," Maggie said firmly. "Not a single word." Anna covered her face with both hands. "Mom, I cannot take this anymore." "You are not alone," Maggie whispered, "and we are documenting everything." The next step required precision. Maggie called Amelia and explained the situation. The attorney listened and immediately began instructing Maggie on how to save every threatening text. Each message needed a screenshot with a timestamp. Each call needed to be logged. Amelia explained that patterns of harassment mattered just as much as the content. Maggie followed every instruction carefully. She set Anna's phone to filter unknown numbers and automatically log repeated calls. Within an hour, Daniel's name appeared on the incoming call list 17 times. 17 attempts to intimidate her daughter in a single night. Anna cried quietly as the phone buzzed. Maggie sat beside her for each minute, holding her hand with a calm strength. Around midnight, another message appeared. Brooke again. A close-up photo of the same scissors, taken from a different angle. No caption this time, just the image. It made Anna's skin crawl. Maggie took the phone. "Keep breathing. We will record everything." While Anna tried to rest, Maggie stepped into the hallway and checked her messages. There was a new one from Russell. He had reviewed additional records connected to Brooke. His report confirmed that similar intimidation tactics had appeared in earlier cases. The same pattern, the same escalating behavior. It drew an unmistakable line connecting Brooke's past victims to Anna. Maggie read the report twice. Each detail matched what she already suspected. Brooke was not acting out of impulse. She was operating within a method she had used before. The confirmation made Maggie's determination sharpen even further. She returned to the room and sat next to Anna. "You were right," she said softly. "This was never just an affair. It is planned." It is strategic. It is abuse." Anna sniffed and wiped her eyes. "I feel stupid for not seeing it sooner." "You are not stupid," Maggie said. "You were targeted." Anna nodded and leaned against her mother's shoulder. For a few minutes, the room was quiet, except for the soft hum of medical monitors. Maggie used that moment to open her notebook and begin assembling a timeline. She wrote down events from the last 2 months: messages, encounters, incidents of stalking. Every time Brooke appeared in the house without knocking. Every time Daniel ignored Anna's concerns. Every moment of neglect that helped Brooke's cruelty flourish. She referenced the footage from the cameras. She matched the dates. She confirmed the times. With each entry, the structure of the case grew clearer. Maggie marked each page carefully, building a detailed map of 8 weeks of escalating harm. When she finished the timeline, she added notes about conversations, emotional reactions, and safety concerns. The report grew steadily in her hands. Over the next hour, she wrote without stopping. Her handwriting filled page after page. By the time she finished, she had compiled 22 pages of evidence. Nothing speculative. Only facts. Only verifiable medical symptoms, witnessed behavior, and documented threats. At dawn, Amelia arrived at the hospital with a briefcase and a tired but focused expression. Maggie handed her the report. Amelia sat down at the small table in the room and read the entire document from beginning to end. She did not speak until she turned over the last page. "This," Amelia said, tapping the stack with her finger, "is more than enough to request an immediate protective order. The judge will not hesitate." A flicker of hope crossed Maggie's face. For the first time in days, Anna allowed herself to exhale softly. But before the relief settled, Anna's phone lit up again. This time it was a single message from Daniel. "I am coming to the hospital tomorrow. We need to talk." Anna gasped, her body tensing with fear. Maggie grabbed the phone and stared at the message. Her eyes hardened. She held the phone firmly in her hand and whispered, "Then I will be waiting for him." She stood beside Anna's bed, ready for the next confrontation. The next morning, the hospital hallways were filled with soft sunlight and the quiet hum of early activity. Nurses pushed carts from room to room, and the scent of disinfectant drifted through the air. Anna rested with her eyes half open, still exhausted from the night before. Maggie sat beside her, alert and protective, prepared for whatever might happen. She already sensed trouble coming. She did not need to wait long. Daniel arrived dressed in a pressed shirt and a conservative blazer, pretending calm authority. His shoes clicked across the tile floor as he approached the reception desk. He placed a polite smile on his face, but the nurse on duty noticed the tension in his jaw. "I am here to see my wife," he said smoothly. "She is not in a good mental state. I want to make sure she does not harm herself or the baby." The nurse frowned. "Sir, we have no report of instability. She is here for medical monitoring." Daniel leaned in slightly. "She has been emotionally erratic for months. I am worried. Please note that in her chart." Hospital protocol required the nurse to record any family concern, even if it sounded suspicious. She made a quick note, but her eyes narrowed. Something felt off. Daniel thanked her and walked toward the elevator with a falsely concerned expression. In a car parked outside, Brooke held her phone and recorded herself with tears she forced out. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I just want to apologize. I misunderstood everything. I never meant to hurt anyone. I was emotional and confused." She sniffed loudly, making sure her eyes looked red. "I care about Anna. This is all a big misunderstanding." After recording several takes, She chose the most convincing one and sent it to a group of mutual acquaintances. Within minutes, the video began circulating among friends, shaping a narrative that painted her as remorseful and Anna as overreacting. Inside the hospital, Daniel called his attorney. He stepped into a quiet corner of the hallway and spoke in a low voice. "I need to be prepared for a custody conversation. If she files anything, I want the advantage." He listened, nodding slowly. Yes, I can gather evidence. I already planted some concerns about her mental state here at the hospital." When he finished the call, he walked confidently toward Anna's room. He knocked once, then opened the door without waiting. Anna flinched. Maggie rose from her chair instantly. "You do not come in here unless we say so." Daniel ignored her. He looked directly at Anna with a practiced expression of concern. "Anna, we need to talk. Just the two of us." "No," Maggie said sharply. "There are no private conversations. All communication goes through the attorney." Daniel shot her an irritated glare. "She is my wife." "And she is my daughter," Maggie said calmly. "And she is under a harassment investigation. You do not get special access." Anna pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Her hands trembled. Daniel took a small step forward, but Maggie moved again, placing herself directly between him and the bed. Brooke chose this moment to strike again. Anna's phone vibrated. Maggie reached for it before Anna could. A photo displayed on the screen. It was the same pair of scissors. A close view. Intimidating. Under it, Brooke had typed, "Want another round." Anna covered her mouth as her eyes filled with tears. Her body trembled from the memory. "Stop," Maggie whispered, touching her daughter's shoulder gently. "Breathe. Just breathe. She wants fear. Do not give it to her." Daniel noticed the reaction and smirked. "See, she is unstable. Look at her." Maggie turned toward him, her voice firm. "She is reacting to your abuse, not instability." Daniel scoffed and stepped back. He needed a different angle. After leaving the room for a moment, he found a phone near the nurses' station and called the hospital administration. In a calm, calculated voice, he requested a psychiatric evaluation for Anna. When Maggie heard about it minutes later from a confused nurse, her reaction was immediate. She walked straight to the patient advocacy office and presented the abuse reports, the photos of the hair on the bathroom floor, screenshots of the threatening messages, and the medical notes describing stress-induced symptoms. The advocate listened carefully and pulled up Anna's file. When she saw the concerned family note, she frowned. "We will handle this," the advocate said. "Her husband's request appears retaliatory. We will block any unnecessary evaluations until the abuse claim is processed." Maggie nodded, relieved but still tense. The advocate asked for copies of all evidence. Maggie provided them without hesitation. She returned to Anna's room feeling stronger, knowing the system was now aware of the manipulation. Meanwhile, Brooke sat in her parked car deleting everything. Photos, messages, contacts. She wiped her device repeatedly, muttering in frustration, "They are not getting anything from me." She deleted entire years of conversations. She erased entire albums. She even reset her phone twice, fearing that something incriminating might still be hidden. Maggie anticipated this. She understood abusers. She understood panic. She smiled quietly to herself when Russell texted her. "She is deleting evidence. That is a sign of guilt. Courts love that." Inside Anna's room, Daniel attempted to regain control. He returned, but the confidence in his posture had softened. He looked at Anna, with a forced, gentle expression. "I want to help you. Let us talk about the baby. Let us work things out." Anna did not respond. She stared at her hands. Her silence unsettled him. He shifted uncomfortably. Pretending calm, he did not feel. Maggie finally spoke. "We are filing for a protective order." Daniel blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "We have an attorney. We have evidence, and we are moving forward." Daniel clenched his jaw. He looked at the door, then at Anna again. Without another word, he walked out, leaving behind an air of desperation he tried to hide. Later that afternoon, Maggie met with Amelia downstairs. Amelia held several printed forms. "Everything is ready. We will submit for the no-contact order today." Maggie nodded as they walked together to the courthouse fax terminal within the hospital. The paperwork was filed electronically, and within hours the court responded with an official date for the hearing. "The judge will see us later this week," Amelia said. That night, Maggie stood by the hospital window. The city lights glowed through the glass. Their reflections shimmered against the polished floors. Anna slept quietly, finally at peace for a moment. Maggie placed a hand on the window and exhaled slowly. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "everything changes." Court paperwork had barely settled into the hospital fax system when Daniel stormed into his driveway. His hands trembled as he slammed the car door. The judge had scheduled the hearing. That simple line in the message from his attorney made his chest tighten and his stomach drop. He unlocked the front door and walked inside, his expression pale and drained. Brooke sat on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, but she looked up sharply when she saw him. "What happened?" she asked, her voice cracking. She noticed the panic in his eyes and stood up immediately. "Daniel, tell me." "They set a date," he said, almost whispering. "The court hearing is happening. Soon." Brooke's lips parted in horror. Her phone slipped from her hand and dropped onto the carpet. "No," she said. "No, no, no. If we go to court, everything will come out. The video, the messages, the hair. Everything." Daniel paced back and forth, running his hands through his hair. "My attorney said we have no leverage. None. Maggie and that lawyer have too much evidence." Brooke stepped toward him, her voice rising. "You promised me we would handle this. You promised me this would never get to court." Daniel turned sharply. "You were the one who took the scissors. You were the one who pushed things too far." Brooke's face flushed with anger. "You let me. You stood there and watched. Do not put this on me." Their voices grew louder. Each accusation bounced off the living room walls with the weight of fear. Panic fed their anger. Anger fed their panic. Brooke clutched her hair with both hands and cried, "We are going to prison." Daniel froze. The word lingered in the air like smoke. Prison. He sank onto the couch, breathing heavily. "We have to disappear," he said slowly. "We cannot stay here. Not after the court gets involved, not after the evidence." Brooke wiped her face. She nodded quickly, desperate for direction. "So what do we do?" Daniel stood, walked to the bedroom, and pulled out 2 backpacks. He tossed one to her. "We leave, tonight." They moved through the house frantically, grabbing clothes, money, and anything valuable. Brooke stuffed toiletries, chargers, and a change of shoes into her bag with shaking hands. Daniel emptied drawers and shoved items inside without thinking. They avoided the windows and turned off most of the lights, afraid of being seen or heard. Every small noise made them jump. At midnight, they stepped out into the cold air. The neighborhood was silent. Daniel started the car without headlights, rolling slowly out of the driveway. Brooke hunched low in the seat, her heart hammering in her chest. As they exited the subdivision, she whispered, "Where are we going?" "North," Daniel said. "There is a place in the woods I stayed at years ago. Nobody goes there." They drove for more than 40 miles before leaving the highway. The narrow dirt road was surrounded by tall pines and thick brush. The moonlight barely reached the forest floor. Eventually, Daniel stopped the car in front of an abandoned cabin. The wood was weathered. The roof sagged slightly. The windows were dark. Brooke wrapped her arms around herself as they stepped inside. The air was cold and smelled of dust. The floorboards creaked under their feet. The only furniture was an old table and a few worn chairs. Brooke peered through a cracked window, expecting police lights to appear at any moment. "I hate this place," she whispered. Daniel ignored her. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Do not worry," he said. "I know people." A rough voice answered. Daniel explained their situation carefully. "We need protection. We need someone to make sure nobody comes near this cabin. And we need a route out of the country." There was a long pause. Then the voice asked, "How fast?" "Within a week," Daniel said. Another pause. Then the voice said, "It will cost you." Daniel agreed before hearing the full amount. Desperation made his decisions simple. Hours later, headlights appeared in the woods. 3 men stepped out of a truck with heavy jackets and hardened expressions. Daniel handed them an envelope of cash. The men nodded and began walking the perimeter. Brooke flinched each time she heard footsteps outside. She sat at the table, hugging her knees, whispering to herself that everything would be fine as long as they got to Canada. By dawn, the cabin felt like a trap and a refuge at the same time. Daniel looked out the front door and said quietly, "We are fugitives now." Meanwhile, back at the hospital, the atmosphere was calm and warm. Anna sat up slowly, sipping water as Maggie arranged blankets around her. She still looked pale, but her breathing was steady. Maggie pulled up a chair and sat close. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" she asked softly. "A little better," Anna said, still scared, "but I feel safer here." "You are safe," Maggie assured her. "We are preparing everything for the hearing." "Amelia says the judge will take this seriously." Anna nodded, though anxiety lingered in her eyes. "I keep thinking about what will happen and what they will try to do next." Maggie took her hand. "We stay focused. We have evidence. We have witnesses. You have people fighting for you." Anna smiled weakly. "I do not know what I would do without you." "You do not have to know," Maggie said. "I am here. Always." The two of them continued talking about legal steps and safety plans. Neither of them knew that miles away, deep in the forest, Daniel and Brooke were already living like criminals. Neither of them sensed the fear bubbling inside the cabin. Neither imagined that the 2 people they thought they would face in court were no longer within reach. As evening fell, Maggie's phone rang. It was Mrs. Collins, a neighbor who lived across from Daniel's house. Her voice was shaky. "Maggie, I thought you should know," she said. "Daniel's house has been dark all day. The car is gone. They left sometime during the night." Maggie frowned. "Left? Where did they go?" "I do not know," the neighbor replied. "But they are not home. They left in a hurry." Something felt wrong. Before Maggie could respond, another call came through. This time it was a local police officer. "Mrs. Turner," he said in a serious tone, "we attempted to contact Daniel and Brooke today. Both phones are off. Surveillance shows they left their residence last night. We believe they have left the city." Maggie gripped the edge of the table, stunned. The officer paused, then added, "It appears they have disappeared." The morning light filtered through the hospital curtains when Maggie returned from the hallway with her phone still in her hand. Her expression was tense. She had just ended a call from the police department. She stood for a moment outside Anna's room, gathering her breath, then opened the door quietly. Anna was awake, sitting upright, with pillows supporting her back. Maggie walked to her bedside and sat slowly. "Anna," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her voice was steady, but her eyes revealed the weight of the message. Anna's fingers tightened around the blanket. "What is it, Mom?" Maggie took her hand and held it firmly. "The police confirmed that Daniel and Brooke have disappeared. They left the city last night." Anna inhaled sharply, her lips parted, and for a moment she could not speak. "They left," she repeated quietly. "Where did they go?" "They do not know yet," Maggie said. She stroked the back of Anna's hand. "But they are looking for them. They have officers on it already." Anna lowered her head, her shoulders trembling slightly. "I am scared. What if they come back? What if they try something again?" Maggie leaned closer and whispered, "Listen to me. They will not come back here. The police will find them. This is not our burden anymore. Let the law chase them." Anna nodded slowly and wiped the corner of her eye. She took a deep breath and tried to regain control. Maggie stayed beside her until her breathing steadied. Several miles away, the police station was in chaos. Officers hurried through hallways with folders and radio equipment. The chief investigator stepped into the main briefing room where several teams were already seated. The walls were covered with maps, satellite images, and marked highways. "We have 2 fugitives," he said firmly. "They left their residence during the night. Their phones are turned off. Their vehicle was last seen heading north. We are splitting into teams." He pointed at the board. Team 1 will cover road checkpoints and gas stations. Team 2 will sweep the forested regions beyond the main highway. Team 3 will trace financial activity and credit card attempts. The officers nodded and moved quickly to gather equipment. Radios crackled with incoming tips and updates. Then a new call came in. The dispatcher raised a hand. "We have a sighting. A man and a woman matching their description were seen near the northern forest." The room shifted instantly. Officers gathered around the map as the chief placed a marker on the location. "That area has limited access. If they are hiding there, they will need help to move north." A second call followed almost immediately. "Possible confirmation," the dispatcher said. "Anonymous informant claims the couple contacted a criminal group for protection and for assistance crossing into Canada." The officers exchanged serious looks. The chief responded, "Prepare the tactical unit. We move now." Within minutes, police vehicles sped out of the station, lights flashing. A helicopter lifted from the roof, heading toward the forest. The forest region was quiet and dense, filled with tall pines and narrow dirt paths. Officers moved in formation, using maps and satellite coordinates to follow tracks. As they approached an abandoned cabin hidden among thick bushes, one officer raised a fist, signaling everyone to stop. Fresh footprints were visible in the mud. Smoke residue from a recent fire clung to the air. A few empty cans lay scattered nearby, still warm to the touch. "They are here," one officer whispered. Before they could move closer, gunfire erupted from behind a fallen log. Members of the hired criminal group burst out of hiding and opened fire on the officers. The tactical team dropped behind trees and rocks, returning fire immediately. The forest exploded with noise as bullets struck bark, and leaves rained down from branches overhead. The officers advanced in controlled formation. One of the criminals charged forward, but was subdued by a SHIELD team. Another tried to flee deeper into the forest, but was taken down by a flank officer. The sound of gunfire echoed through the trees for several minutes, until the last member of the criminal group was cornered and forced to surrender. With the area secured, the officers moved toward the cabin. They positioned themselves around the structure, weapons drawn. One officer shouted, "Police, step out with your hands up!" Inside, Daniel and Brooke froze. They had been arguing, panic rising between them. Brooke clutched her bag against her chest. Daniel attempted to climb through the back window. Officers stormed the cabin in seconds. Two grabbed Daniel by the arms before he could escape. He struggled, but the officers pressed him against the wall and cuffed him swiftly. Brooke screamed as she was pulled away from the corner where she had been crouching. She covered her face with both hands, crying uncontrollably. The officers searched the cabin, confirming no one else was inside. "Daniel Morgan," an officer said, "you are under arrest for fleeing jurisdiction, obstruction, and endangering public safety." Another officer added, "Your charges have escalated significantly." Daniel's face twisted with panic. Brooke continued sobbing as officers walked her outside in handcuffs. Back at the cabin entrance, the tactical commander surveyed the scene. The criminal group was disarmed and contained. Daniel and Brooke were escorted toward a reinforced armored vehicle parked near the clearing. Cameras from the police helicopter captured the arrest as officers guided the pair into the back of the armored transport. News helicopters began circling above, broadcasting live updates. Two fugitives captured after armed confrontation in the northern forest, one reporter announced. Their crimes have now multiplied as a result of their attempted escape. Within hours, the story spread across television networks, radio stations, and online news platforms across the United States. Headlines flashed with photos of the Forrest arrest. Commentators discussed the severity of the charges and the dramatic manhunt that had unfolded. Back at the hospital, Maggie returned to Anna's room carrying her phone. She sat next to her daughter and took a gentle breath. "Anna," she said quietly, "they found them." Anna looked up with wide eyes. "They did?" "Yes," Maggie nodded. "The police captured them, both of them. They are safe in custody." For a moment, Anna did not speak. Her eyes filled with relief. Her shoulders sank back into the pillows. She stared at her hands, then lifted her gaze again. "Mom," she whispered, "it is finally over." Maggie brushed a tear from her daughter's cheek. "Yes, sweetheart, it is over." Anna closed her eyes and let the smallest, softest smile appear. It was the first smile she had allowed herself in many painful days, and Maggie held her hand tightly while the fragile sense of safety finally returned. Daniel and Brooke were transported from the armored vehicle into the precinct through a secured back entrance, each escorted by officers who refused to make eye contact with them. Their wrists were cuffed. Their clothes were dirty from the forest soil. Their faces were drawn tight with exhaustion. They were separated immediately and taken down different hallways. Daniel was shoved into an interrogation room with bright fluorescent lights and a metal table bolted to the floor. He sat down slowly, attempting to steady his breathing. When the detective entered, Daniel tried to regain his confident facade. He sat up straight, took a breath, and began speaking quickly. "I was pressured," he said. "She threatened me. Brooke made me do everything." The detective, unfazed, opened a folder and slid several photographs across the table. Photos of the cabin, photos of the scissors, screenshots of threatening messages, a printed log of calls. all of it connected to him as much as to Brooke. Daniel's expression faltered. He tried again. "I did not want to run. I was scared. She convinced me. I did not plan anything." The detective placed one more piece of evidence on the table. It was an audio recording captured from the cabin, taken from a tactical microphone during the arrest. Brooke's voice shouted phrases that made Daniel stiffen. One line echoed around the room. "We should have gotten rid of her sooner." Daniel's shoulders sagged. His voice cracked. He leaned back in the chair, unable to find another excuse. Across the building, Brooke sat in her own interrogation room, trembling. Her eyes were red from crying. Her hair was tangled from the struggle at the cabin. When detectives entered, she immediately pointed toward Daniel. "He made me do everything," she said. "He pushed me. He planned all of it. I never wanted to hurt her." The detectives said nothing. They simply placed the same stack of evidence on the metal table. Photos of her holding scissors, screenshots of her messages, the threatening picture of the scissors she sent to Anna, the video from the living room where she twirled the scissors and mocked Anna openly. Brooke's crying turned frantic. "I was emotional," she whispered. "I was confused. I panicked. It was not me. I swear, it was not me." None of her pleas mattered. The documented evidence was overwhelming. When the interrogations ended, both were escorted through a secured hallway toward the detention wing. They did not speak. They did not look at each other. The officers led them to processing, took their fingerprints, removed their belongings, and placed them in standard prison uniforms. Within hours, they were transferred to the county jail to await their first court appearance. Word spread quickly among the inmates. News channels had broadcast their faces nationwide. Their crimes were no secret. The entire cell block already knew they had terrorized a pregnant woman. Daniel was placed into a large communal cell that housed inmates with long histories of violence. When he stepped inside, the room fell quiet. Several men stared directly at him. Their expressions were dark and unreadable. Daniel attempted to keep his gaze low as he walked toward an empty bunk. A tall inmate approached him first. "You the one who hurt a pregnant woman?" he asked calmly. Daniel swallowed and tried to shake his head. "You do not understand. It was not what it looks like." The inmate slapped him across the face so hard that Daniel stumbled. "No excuses," the inmate growled. "Men like you do not belong in here." Another inmate stood up from his bunk. "Make him kneel," he said. "Start by teaching him respect." Daniel felt hands grab his shoulders and force him down to the cold concrete. He winced as his knees hit the floor. Someone pushed his head forward until his cheek touched the ground. A fist struck the back of his ribs. Another hit his shoulder. He tried to cover his face, but someone kicked his arm aside. "Get it through your head," one inmate said. "You do not get to hurt women here." Daniel's lips split. Blood dripped onto the cement. He did not fight back. He did not yell. Fear froze his voice. Meanwhile, in the women's ward, Brooke was led into a narrow cell lined with 8 bunks. The moment she entered, several inmates looked up. One woman with cropped hair stood and walked toward her. "So you are the one," she said quietly. "The one who went after a pregnant woman." Brooke stepped back, shaking her head. "I did not mean to hurt her. I was confused. I was stressed." The shorter inmate stepped behind her. "Want to explain that to her hair?" she asked, grabbing a strand of Brooke's tangled hair. "Since you like cutting other people's." Before Brooke could respond, she was shoved hard across the room. She hit the floor and grabbed her elbow. wincing. Someone kicked her side. Someone else yanked her hair. Brooke screamed for help, but the guard was not present. She tried to crawl toward the corner, but another inmate blocked her path. "You made her bleed," the woman said, kneeling beside her. "You made a pregnant girl suffer. Now you feel it." Brooke covered her head as more blows fell. 2 days passed before the jail staff decided to relocate both Daniel and Brooke to isolated holding units. Their injuries were visible. Bruises covered Daniel's cheek and torso. His lower lip remained swollen. He walked with stiffness, avoiding eye contact with officers. His confidence, arrogance, and composure were gone. Brooke had a split lip, a swollen eye, and scratches across her arms. She sat in silence inside the medical bay with her knees pulled toward her chest. Her hair was matted. She flinched whenever the door opened. When detectives returned for additional questioning, Daniel nodded immediately. "I will talk," he whispered. "I will tell you anything you want. Just keep me away from them." His voice shook with desperation. Brooke reacted the same way. She agreed to answer every question. The tone of defiance and superiority she once showed had vanished. Fear dominated her expression. Although they were moved into safer cells, both knew their situation had changed forever. Their crimes had already carved a permanent place in public memory. Their attempt to escape had multiplied their charges. Their time in the jail had shown them exactly how the world viewed people who harmed the vulnerable. And deep down, even in isolation, they understood one thing clearly. This was only the beginning of the punishment waiting for them in court. The sky above the county courthouse was a pale gray as the armored transport vehicle rolled into the restricted parking area with a low metallic hum. Officers stepped out first, scanning the perimeter, then opened the reinforced back doors. Daniel was led out in shackles. His head hung low. His face carried fading bruises, the purple edges hinting at the violence he had endured in the jail. Brooke followed minutes later, trembling as she stepped onto the pavement. Her hair was tangled and messy, and her eyes were swollen from crying. Cameras clicked from behind barricades as reporters shouted questions, but the officers moved them quickly toward the private entrance of the courthouse. Inside, the courtroom filled with quiet tension. Rows of journalists sat ready with notepads and laptops. Local citizens who had followed the story from the beginning whispered to one another, though many remained silent out of respect for the seriousness of the case. Maggie supported Anna carefully as they entered through the side door reserved for victims and their families. Anna walked slowly, one hand on her belly, the other gripping her mother's arm for balance. When they reached their seats, Maggie helped her settle gently into the cushioned bench. Anna's eyes drifted toward the defense table. The sight of Daniel in handcuffs brought a faint tremor to her hands. She pressed them together to steady herself. 2 months of fear, humiliation, and uncertainty washed over her. But for the first time, she felt protected by the walls around her. There would be no more hiding here, no running, no threats. Daniel glanced briefly in her direction. His eyes were dull and defeated. His lip still showed a healing cut. He looked nothing like the man who once towered over her in anger. Brooke was brought in next. Her knees shook as she walked. She avoided every pair of eyes in the room. She sat beside Daniel without speaking. Even from across the room, Anna could see the faint bruises on her cheek. The judge entered, and everyone stood. When the court was called to order, the prosecution began to present the case. The lead prosecutor spoke clearly and calmly, describing the events from the beginning. He placed photographs onto the projector. First, the photos from the bathroom floor, the strands of hair, the scissors, then the threatening messages, then the camera footage showing Brooke twirling the scissors and mocking Anna, and the recording from the living room that captured Brooke speaking with chilling clarity. The courtroom grew still. One of the jurors shifted uncomfortably. Another looked down at his notes with tightened lips. The prosecutor continued. This was intentional. This was organized. This was planned. And it placed both a pregnant woman and her unborn child in extreme danger. He stepped aside so the video could play again. The moment Brooke lifted the scissors and smirked was met with a ripple of disapproval across the courtroom. A reporter shook her head. A woman in the gallery quietly placed a hand over her mouth. Next came the footage from the Forrest arrest. Officers pinning Daniel to the ground. Brooke being pulled screaming from the cabin. Audio recordings of their frantic arguments. Photographs of cash and maps folded in their bags. Everything was laid in order, piece by piece, until the narrative was impossible to deny. After the evidence presentation, the prosecutor nodded to Amelia. It was time for Anna's testimony. Anna rose slowly. Maggie grasped her hand with encouragement. Anna walked to the witness stand with the help of the bailiff and sat down carefully. She placed one hand on her stomach to calm herself. She looked toward the judge, then toward the jurors, and answered each question with quiet strength. She described the night of the attack, the cold floor, the fear, the scissors flashing near her face, the shock of having her hair cut while Daniel watched. Her voice shook, but she never stopped speaking. When she finished describing the events, several people in the room wiped their eyes. Amelia then asked about the emotional effects. Anna explained the panic attacks, the sleepless nights, the fear of losing her child. She did not exaggerate. She did not dramatize. She simply told the truth. When she stepped down from the stand, Maggie hugged her gently, whispering words of pride. Next, Maggie was called to testify. She presented her 22-page report with every detail she had documented. She described the night she found Anna in the bathroom. She explained the hospital reports and the stress symptoms. She walked the court through the timeline she had built, showing how the pattern of manipulation and abuse grew over weeks. Her voice was steady. She looked directly at the defendants only once. And in that moment, Daniel lowered his eyes. The defense attempted to minimize their involvement. But neither Daniel nor Brooke could hide behind excuses. Daniel's voice cracked whenever he tried to redirect blame. Brooke cried and pleaded, but her words held no weight in the presence of the overwhelming evidence. Finally, the judge delivered his decision. "Daniel Morgan," he said, his tone firm and unwavering, "you are found guilty of emotional abuse, physical endangerment, conspiracy to harm a pregnant woman, evading law enforcement, hiring criminal assistance, and obstructing justice. You are sentenced to 35 years in state prison." Daniel's legs seemed to weaken. A bailiff stepped closer in preparation. The judge turned to Brooke. "Brooke Sanders, you are found guilty of physical assault, intentional emotional harm, endangering a mother and unborn child, involvement in criminal conspiracy, evasion of a court order, and obstruction. You are sentenced to 28 years in state prison." Brooke's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She clutched the edge of the table as if trying to stay upright. The bailiff took her arm firmly. Daniel looked once more toward Anna. There was no anger in his eyes now, only a hollow acceptance. But Anna did not flinch. She did not look away. She simply breathed, steady and calm, knowing the nightmare was over. As the officers led them out of the courtroom, the room remained silent. Not one person applauded. Not one person cheered. It was a quiet, solemn moment where justice carried its own weight. Maggie reached for Anna. They held each other tightly. Anna cried softly, not from pain this time, but from the release of everything she had carried for so long. When they exited the courthouse, the sun broke through the gray clouds. The light touched Anna's face as she paused at the top of the courthouse steps. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the gentle movement of life within her. A small, peaceful smile graced her lips. After months of fear and darkness, the path ahead finally felt open, warm, and safe. It was the first true moment of healing, and the beginning of a new life for both mother and child.